So, if you don't already know, leather shrinkage is actually a pretty common problem amongst the earlier revisions of the Minolta XD. And I think that that's something that turns a lot of people off just because of how ugly it can be. You can actually see on this one where the leather started to pull back a little bit, revealing the adhesive underneath it. So today we're going to be replacing it with this skin from HugoStudio.com. This is their sangria colored Angus leather. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. The reason I chose Hugo Studios was because they were the only ones that advertised their skins as being laser cut, and I think most other online retailers are hand cut, and I just wanted a really nice clean fit, so that's what I went with. So some things you're going to need before we get started. The first, you're going to want a spanner tool. I got this one on Amazon for about 40 bucks. It came with this one of them with a pointed head, the other one with a flat head. You're going to want one that at least goes down to 0.4 millimeters. This one goes all the way down to 0, so I don't have to worry about it, but just keep that in mind, just for this camera specifically, because you're going to need it to remove the plate on top of the timer lever to remove it. It just makes installing the leather a whole lot easier. Your camera may be different. You may not even need it at all. You may not even have a timer lever. You can actually install this one without removing it by priming the timer lever like 90 degrees and slotting it through this hole. But being this is the 50th anniversary and all, I figured I'd just get it done the right way. So you may need that, but you're definitely going to need Purell Advanced. Now, I had a little trouble finding this. I couldn't find it at my local Home Depot. I couldn't find it at Walmart. I ended up just ordering it on Amazon for like 14 bucks. I got like 6 little pocket-sized bottles like this. The reason you want Purell Advanced is because it doesn't have any moisturizers or additives. It's just a straight alcohol gel. And you're going to need this for when you're applying the new skin. You want to put it on the adhesive side, so when you're putting it on the body, it doesn't dry and stick immediately, and it gives you a little wiggle room, so if you don't nail it the first time, it's not going to be the end of the world. Some other things you might need, I'm using a little film canister just to pour a little Purell in, a brush just to apply it, some toothpicks, Q-tips. You want to be very thorough when you're cleaning up the body after you remove the old leather. You don't want to have any specks of dust or residue of the adhesive left over, because any tiny little speck is going to leave bumps when you put your new skin on. Okay, so first things first, I should probably mention that I did loosen this before I started recording, just because it was so difficult to do. It was probably the most difficult part about this entire project, just because I felt like I was going to break it every time I tried. But the best advice I can give you is to hold the timer lever in place so it doesn't rotate as you're trying to spin the plate counterclockwise. And just make sure that you have the spanner tool firmly in the holes, otherwise it's super easy for it to slip out and scuff the plate. So when you're taking off the timer lever, there's going to be 4 parts. You've got the outer plate, the plastic lever, followed by a square bit, followed by a round bit. Just make sure you keep track of all of those and put them back in the correct order. And once you've done all that, then we're ready to start removing the old leather. Now, a word of advice: if you happen to have one of the later or newer revisions of the XD where they corrected this leather shrinkage problem, I would highly suggest that you just leave it alone, because not only did they use a different type of leather in these later revisions to prevent it from shrinking, they also used a different type of adhesive. And this adhesive will give you hell if you try taking it off. It will not come off smoothly like the one you see here. This one is almost like a clean tape and it just peels off. But in the later or newer revisions, it's almost like a mesh mixed with like a super glue. It's really nasty, and I've seen people try to take it off before and it just ends up in a huge mess. You're going to be scraping at this stuff for hours. I don't know why you would want to take the leather off of a perfectly good like late model XD. The late models are actually harder to find anyway, so I really suggest just leave it alone. If you want to do some custom work on a camera or have some custom leatherette, I would suggest you just get an older model XD and just find one on eBay for cheap that has the leather shrinking and just do that. But please don't mess with the later revision XDs. The leather on them looks fine, and if you take them off, you're just going to be in a world of hurt. Now, I don't want to bore you with all the specifics about the different XD revisions because I believe there are about 5, normally labeled between A through E. But just know that somewhere in the middle of revision B, perhaps, or after revision B, is when they corrected these leather shrinking problems. And there are a few physical characteristics to these different revisions, so when you're looking for them on eBay, you know exactly what revision you're buying, and you pretty much know what type of leather to expect. So another thing I need to mention is that when you're cleaning the surface of the body, use that Purell Advanced. Do not use like normal alcohol like this to clean the surface of the body, because the alcohol can potentially seep in between the cracks and crevices of the camera's body, and you just don't want any alcohol getting in there and drying any oil up or anything like that. So use the Purell. It doesn't sink in between the cracks. It'll just sit on the surface. It'll evaporate before it gets anywhere near your camera's internals. And also, before I forget, there is a bit of a lip that goes around the entire mount of the camera that you can see me digging in right there. Now, the new leatherette kind of has to fit under that little lip, so make sure that you just dig in there with a toothpick, maybe put a little bit of cotton on the end of it just to make sure that you get all the little bits of adhesive that may be under that lip. So now we're going to move on to the back. So we're just going to remove this and get the whole camera out of the equation so we're not fumbling with it the whole time. So the back gave me a few problems. The leatherette didn't seem to come off as smoothly as it did in the front. Not that big of a deal, it just required a lengthy cleanup. But the real problem with the back plate was the memo holder. The leatherette seems to be tucked into the bottom and sides of the memo holder. And as far as I know, there's no like quick release way to remove the memo holder and snap it back on, so the only option I really had was to cut it off. But if anybody happens to know how to remove the memo holder or how to remove the leatherette in a less destructive manner, then please let me know in the comments. But in the meantime, while I clean up this back plate, I'm gonna speed up the footage and play some music. Sorry, I just had to let that track ride. Links in the description if you're interested. Honestly, the first two pieces are the easiest parts to do. Pretty straightforward. Not much narration I really could have added. You just line it up, apply your Purell, and press. However, this back piece is just a little bit more complicated. Now, you could start from one end and just work your way to the other side, like from right to left or left to right. But personally, I thought it would be best to just start right from the middle and sort of shape it around the memo holder. And that seemed to work pretty well. However, I did add a little bit too much Purell to this side, and it was like sliding around everywhere when I was trying to apply it, and it took forever for it to stick properly. But if you happen to make the same mistake I did, don't freak out. It's not the end of the world. You didn't ruin your leather, you didn't ruin your adhesive or anything. Just keep working with it, keep pressing it, and eventually it will stick and you will get your desired results. Also, something that I didn't even know I was going to need, which you can see me using right now, is this Nintendo Switch little screen protector applier. And it's just this tiny little piece of flimsy but strong black plastic. And I was super lucky to just have this within arm's reach when I was doing this, but it turned out to be the perfect tool for applying this leatherette, and especially for tucking it in around the memo holder. It was just an invaluable tool. It's almost, I would say, required. And I know that most of you don't just have one of these lying around, but I'm sure that you can find something around your house to supplement this with, like a thick piece of cardstock. I mean, you might even be able to get it done with just a toothpick like I did with the front, but I just happened to have this laying around and it worked great, so I used it. And after I got everything straightened out and I got the little pieces tucked under the memo holder, I let it dry for a couple hours because, like I said, I used a ton of Purell and it needed some time to dry. But after that, it's pretty much done. It looks great. The only thing left to do is to put the timer lever back on, which we're going to start with the round bit, the square bit, the lever itself, and then the outer plate. And then after all that, we're done. And the finished product is looking pretty damn cool, I've got to say. Again, this is the sangria colored Angus leather from hugostudio.com, laser cut, which you can really tell it's a very seamless fit. I definitely recommend. But I didn't stop there. I also got the kit for the Auto Winder D, which is the motor drive accessory for the XD. I've already prepped it and everything. I've already removed the old leatherette and wiped it down. So the only thing we have left to do is to go ahead and apply it.
One step ahead of heartbreak, one step ahead of me.